Okay.
Nice.
Welcome to this is another special guest episode of the Fratelli di Rugby podcast in sort of a nice collaboration with I keep calling the Rugby Nause. It's probably quite rude actually, given that your name's obviously quite clearly not the Rugby Nause, but we are joined by the Rugby Nause himself, Andy. Andy, how are you? Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, no, it's great to be here, lads. Yeah, I'm not doing too badly. How are you guys?
Yeah, well, we've been better, haven't we, Ottavio? We've been better.
Yeah, last time I saw you, Marcello, wasn't a good night. Let's say. So
No,
it was bad last time.
I had to keep drinking after our live. Yeah, I had to just keep going. It was depressing. So I think we'll probably, it seems, as much as we don't want to, it seems the obvious place to sort of start is Friday. So Andy, me and Ottavio and Mike, who's also on the podcast with us, we've sort of debriefed it a fair amount after the game, and we did a little video afterwards as well. So I guess everyone's kind of heard what we have to think. So maybe from a different perspective for you, what did you actually find the most alarming about Friday? Was it how good New Zealand were, or was it how bad Italy were?
I think. I mean,
you could be honest as well. You could be honest as well. Don't hold back.
Fire.
I think what you really don't like to see, and the big fear when you have like big mismatches, is kind of professionalism breaking down and like the team kind of the effort levels dropping and the team not seeming to do the basics properly. And it sort of felt like after 20 minutes or so, that's what happened. You know, the Artie Surveyor try where he just walked in off the back of the line out, when he goes over there as a as a neutral, you're watching it thinking, oh God, like this is going to get really ugly. And unfortunately it did. But yeah, by the end of it, you just feel sorry for everyone involved.
Yeah, I go along with that, and I'm thinking that probably New Zealand were just as maybe alarmed, as shocked. Ottavio, you had a few days to process this.
To rewatch the game too.
Yes, I mean, Andy, just so you're aware, Ottavio is our stat man, our analysis man. That is his remit. So Ottavio, what went wrong, or was it very much a psychological thing?
There was the psychological part in this game, but I think also the choices we made during the game. Speaking about line out, for example, we try many times to play on the tail of the line out, something that we didn't try so much to do in the last two games. So you don't have neither that timing, that feeling to throw the ball in the last for the last man in the line out. That was something. The shape of attack was there, the one that we know. But then, like Andy said, the basics, the mistakes, the handling errors, the cleaning in the breakdown, a little bit of alarming, and the scrum on rollerblades in the second half, that too. Because the basics, we need to start from those situations. Think about the line out, how important is we score to try from set piece, and you don't have that to fight back. It's hard. And scrum, oof, even harder. So not a good day, Marcello.
No, it all went wrong. And have you got anything to add to that? Was there anything that particularly stood out for you?
You do wonder like what the game plan was, like what they thought was going to happen versus what actually happened, because it seemed like what they were trying to do was really quite high risk, right? Like they really wanted to take them on. They really wanted to throw the ball around. They didn't really want to change, like the way that we've gotten used to Italy playing in the Six Nations in the last, I don't know, year or two, right? Where they fling it around, they're exciting to watch, but they're loose. And, you know, against the All Blacks, I would have thought they might come in with a bit more of a pragmatic approach. Because no matter how, I know there was talk in the build-up about how the All Blacks weren't themselves, but no matter how badly they're performing, there's still going to be a pretty big gap between them and the Italians, right? And I feel like the Italian coaching staff would know that. So it would be interesting to know I mean, I know the margins are fine, and it doesn't actually take that much for you to get hammered in international rugby, right? Like stuff can go wrong really, really quickly. But I'd love to know what the grand plan was and the way that they thought the game was going to play out.
But having said that, alternatively, is that what stuck out for me was we obviously get, it's the first try is you just hold your hands up and say, well, if New Zealand are going to score tries like that, then there is very little we can do about it. And ultimately, if that's the way they were going to win, then we were happy with that, because if we're going to be beaten by a better rugby, then so be it. But to then concede tries 2 and 3 inside, I think it was literally maybe 45 seconds. At that point, at 21-3 down, inside 20 minutes, game plans out the window, and it's about and then what do you do? So I guess we're Italy in a position where there was very little they could do, because they had to change a game plan within a split second, and that's impossible, especially against the All Blacks.
And also the way they scored the try, from exit strategy, let's say, from a restart kick, something that we scored the try, we always try to attack from there, and then they score in that way with the line break from Savea. We said, man, this is gonna be a long, long night. And it was so long, March.
It was just
long.
Didn't seem to end. It didn't really seem to end.
Man, I was with the hundreds.
Yeah, it's Ottavio. Ottavio at the time was actually wanting to see 100, because he thought, for some reason,
let's do big.
Yeah,
let's go big.
if we're gonna be remembered for this World Cup, let's be the team that gets beaten by 100. Me and Mike were the opposite. Didn't really want that to happen. But look, it's over now. That game is done, and weirdly, strangely, Italy are in a position of being able to qualify for a quarterfinals this Friday, should they beat France, which of course is not as easy as it sounds. Andy, first and foremost, France. What do you think they will be expecting? Because I guess there is very much an emotional approach here of Italy are a wounded soldier, so you always have to be wary of that. We've also got Kieran Crowley's final game with Italy, so there is quite an emotional aspect to this game. But from a rugby point of view, do you see any sort of weaknesses in this French side?
I think whenever Dupont's not there, they do suffer for him not being there, right? And it seems like everything they're doing is geared towards getting him back for the quarters, so there's not going to be some miracle recovery and he's going to play against Italy. But I still think you have to look at it. It's a mountain to climb for Italy, right? It's probably not as tough of a game on paper as the All Blacks, but the fact that they've just been on the wrong end of a really bad result, and now they've got to play the host nation in a World Cup, who'll be looking to, there's not a huge amount on the line for France. I suppose that's one thing that does help the Italians. But I mean, a lot of it for me, it really does depend on the team the French pick, because they picked that team to face Uruguay, and I was thinking, that's still a great team. That's gonna go out there and really put on a performance. And then they were awful. So there's clearly like a bit of an issue with France and the gap between their first team and their second team. So it'll be interesting to see what they go with. If they go with a strong team, I would give Italy like basically no hope, I'm sorry to say. But if they go with that, if they go with any kind of a hybrid and they start messing with combinations and they pick guys who haven't played together very much, all it takes is, it's like you say, that period in the All Blacks and Italy game where they conceded the 3 tries, right, bam, 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 right after the other. If France are uncertain and Italy can get a couple of big moments early on in the game, it will change everything. The crowd will get on their back. It'll completely change the atmosphere. You just never know. But I mean, if I was a gambling man, I would go with France. But I don't think there is unassailable a task for Italy. I think that's definitely true.
Sure.
I'm gonna send to everybody one of the team that seems to be the possible team. Now you're gonna see it in our chat. It seems to be some French media saying Ramos, Penaud, Ficou, Danty, Bielberry, Jalibert, Lucu, Olivon, Aldrich, Jelonche. Yes, March, I feel you. Clamont, Woki, the best. Antonio Movacabel. This is Le Rugby Nauseur, one of the French media press on internet, saying this is one of the probably one of the team that they can pick. But Andy, you were saying yes. Let's see if they're gonna go with the strongest team possible. Which probably at the moment is this one, based on form. Bielbarri is over Villiers, which is Villiers, no, somebody that really hurts us in a couple of times. But or if they're gonna do something weird, but they have to win the match. They have to win, and a real win, and not something on the edge. They need that.
Oh,
So
we're
we're gonna
fucked again,
win,
then,
right?
aren't we? My God, we're fucked
I
again.
mean, that if that's the team they go with, that's a mountain to climb. That's a very,
Aye,
very
aye, aye.
difficult.
Man, it's the
That's a
same
very, very
team we
difficult task.
play in the Six Nation because they play
Sure.
against us the first round the best. I know it's a World Cup, but it's also World Cup for some of them, and who knows? Who knows? Maybe some rage is gonna. Our fighting spirit is gonna be better this week.
I think that must be the case. I find it very hard to believe that there won't be a reaction from that. And I think it's this Italian side is they are not that bad. I mean, we're not a bad rugby side, and what happened last week is will go down as one of the awful nights in Italian rugby history. But that's what it will go down as, an 80 minutes from hell. Just you know, you have to write those things off. But it's very hard to see what Ottavio. I'll come to you with what did we do well in that Six Nations game, and is there something in that game where we should be trying to exploit again?
So we suffer. I'm gonna start from the bad things. Okay, we suffered anyway the first the first half of the game. That was something that we always struggling. Let's say. Also think about Namibia, Uruguay. You know all the games. I know different history every game, red cards, yellow cards, stuff like that. But we suffered the first half of that game. Then we were able to organize better, and I think we defend pretty good. Good kicking game. Probably one of the game with more kicks from our team was against France, and we were more cynical in the getting the points, the 3 points, the try, everything was we were there. Let's say with the attitude and the performance was pretty high standard for what we want to see from the team, and that was maybe one of the best game in the last year.
Sure.
In 2023 was one of that, yeah.
Yeah. Mandy, have you been? How impressed have you been with this French side? Because obviously the Uruguay game was, I guess, almost France in a way. It's been a little bit stop-start in the sense that they obviously had that the opening game of the tournament against New Zealand, all of the sort of the pressure and the expectation of an opening game at your own tournament, and that was sort of best 15 against best 15, and then in the next two games it's been a little bit more trial and error. So are we expecting maybe France to be a little bit more sort of rusty in the opening stages? Is there any chance? Is there any chance of that?
It's an interesting one. It's like a battle between like the old France and the new France, because you look at where French rugby is now, and it feels like they turned a corner a couple of years ago, and it feels like they got fitter, they got more organized, they started playing like a more modern, kind of more professional brand of rugby, right? The old thing about like French teams don't travel and French teams are disorganized and their discipline is poor. Those kind of things, I think they've largely banished when they've got their full first team out there. But there are some games where those old issues with discipline and lack of organization and losing their heads a little bit, there are some games where it starts to come back. And I think particularly when they've got some of the subs in, you do see those old habits start to creep back into the game. And I guess from an Italian perspective, you've got to do whatever it is you can do to bring those aspects of their character out, right? And I think if they're missing Dupont, if they're missing big names, it affects their confidence a little bit. And I think their confidence is still maybe a little bit more brittle than some of the other big teams. But that being said, they showed on the opening night, like in that second half against New Zealand, they kind of ragdolled them. Like they really threw them around the place. It was a really good performance, I thought. So yeah, I guess it depends whether you get old France or new France. It depends how the pressure affects them in that final game.
And I guess we don't even have that luxury of them maybe playing a quarter final anytime soon either, because by all accounts, everyone pretty much gets a 2 week break at least.
Kinda.
Well, kind of. So that doesn't. There's no chance here of France keeping anything back? I don't know. Maybe potentially. Do you think there's any chance of that?
I don't think so. I feel like the trend is changing a little bit on that one. I feel like in the last couple of World Cups, there was a huge amount of talk about when you could rest players. And this time, it just seems like a lot of teams are just picking their strongest team available whenever they can. Like Ireland have done that basically the whole way through the group stage. Wales have done that, but basically the whole way through the group stage. It's, I think people are realizing that like the momentum is as important as avoiding injuries might be. And you can try and second guess what might happen in a game to avoid injury, or you can just pick your best team and start to build some belief and build some consistency within the group. So, yeah, I think especially the last game before the quarterfinals, it feels like, as you say, because there's a decent gap in between, why wouldn't you just pick all your big players, get them running? If there's anyone you're worried about, get them off the field early. But other than that, just let the boys go out and play and see what happens.
And generally speaking, how do you see this World Cup going for France? Obviously, it's going to be South Africa by, barring something incredible happening, they're going to be playing South Africa. So, I mean, that's just as mouth-watering a clash as you could possibly hope for, right?
Yeah, I feel like with everyone available, they're the closest in profile to South Africa, right? They've got like the biggest units. They've got South Africa, obviously the most, I think, physical international team, right? They're the ones who can beat you up the most, but France are close. And particularly when France are at home and they've got the momentum of the crowd behind them and they're playing well. And I remember that November international, is it 2 years ago, where South Africa came to Paris? It was just an amazing game. There was the red cards, and it was one of the most brutal matches I've ever seen. So if we get something that's like that, that's going to be phenomenal in the quarterfinals. And oh God, it's going to be hard to beat the team that wins that game. It's going to be very, very hard to look past.
A lot of confidence over there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's why it was such a massive win for Ireland, I guess. Andy, I'll come to you again on that front. Is Ireland winning that game, what a huge psychological win to get in that tournament. And everyone's sort of saying that, I mean, from a neutral, that was just, and it's such a ridiculous game of rugby to watch. It was such high quality. There was so little in it. And that's why it was such a low scoring game. Because you'd look at it and think, oh God, that looked a bit boring, but it was just sort of anything but. So Ireland massively took one over on that. Do you envisage that being a repeat game potentially to lift the Webb Ellis Trophy?
I mean, it could be, right? It does feel like a lot of these games are coin flips. So I was at the Ireland South Africa game, and at full time, I was like, "Yes, Ireland, we did it. This was a huge barrier for us. We came past it. We were the better team." And then I watched it on TV again when I got home, and I was like, "Oh my God, that game literally could have gone anyway." So I do think it's a huge mental barrier for Ireland to get over, but at the same time, they've won big group games before, and then it's still all come crashing down. So they're still going to have that thing in the back of their minds, like, are we going to get through the quarters? And before then, even, are they going to get through Scotland? Because it would be the most Ireland thing ever. I don't think this team will do it, but it would be the most Ireland thing ever to win that huge game against South Africa and then slip up in a game that everybody expects them to win. So if they go out, if they don't make the final, it won't be, I don't think, because they've bottled it. I think it'll be because they face an amazing team and they lose a really close game. And, there's no shame in that. But, I'd love to see them go all the way. I don't know if they're going to, because you've got to play South Africa, Scotland, quarterfinal, semi-final. You've got to win 4 huge matches in a row. That's a tough ask.
Ottavio, how do you see it going? Do you see Ireland being able to do it?
Ireland can do it. I'm wondering what is going to do Scotland, because we saw something from Scotland in the last couple of matches, but they fail totally against a strong team like South Africa. So the only thing is Scotland wants to waste the plans to do something against Ireland. So maybe some kind of trick over there. If the center's gonna play well, probably there's gonna be more chance for Scotland to move the ball, to be more an attacking team that then release the wings. Because we saw when not when Finn Russell failed, but when the centers pair is not working well, Scotland cannot give all those treats in against a defensive team that it's huge like Ireland. So there is something to think about. And oof, man, I want an entertaining match that as a neutral, no. But I hope Ireland is gonna do it because Bundeagi is smashing everybody around. Johnny Sexton is the mind and the brain of this team, but everybody play the best, and I love the way they switch against South Africa style of play, moving a little bit different the ball from the pod. Cool stuff. So I want to see more tricky stuff from this team and Farrell.
It's very difficult to see Ireland not getting the job done. I think in World Rugby, you maybe the hardest thing to try and do is to try and beat this Irish side when the pressure's on, and also score some tries at the same time. It just seems like Ireland concede maybe one try a game, and that's as much as anyone seems to be able to get. So looks very, very unlikely that will be able to happen for Scotland. But maybe just on the rest of the tournament, obviously watching Australia Portugal a little bit feels like it's worth a mention. It felt at times I felt like I was watching my own country yesterday at times, urging Portugal to try and make it happen, but they butchered so many chances. And whilst the refereeing, you can kind of question it, but Andy, they must have they left some points out there, didn't they?
They did. It was hard to watch at times. Like they had so many overlaps, and they all they had to do was put the ball through the hands. And I really admire their commitment to the way they play. Like you can see that they've decided, like, we are going to play like a sevens team, no matter what happens. This is what we're doing. And I know the moment can get on top of players, but God, you just wanted them to figure it out. Like just a bit of composure, just unlock the defense a little bit. Because even though they had quite a lot of the game, you could see the Australian defense obviously felt quite comfortable a lot of the time, because I think they felt that they knew exactly what they were going to do, and they were going to be able to get up and make a dominant tackle and kind of slow the momentum down. But yeah, it was like watching two teams trying not to win in large parts of that game. I found it kind of frustrating.
Yeah. What next for Eddie Jones, Ottavio? What next?
And my man Eddie Jones, love him so much. Look, 4 years more of Australia. Yes. Let's give him 4 years more in Australia.
Not too
I
sure
hope
about
so, because it's a totally bollocks what they're gonna do, what they're doing in Australia. If they're gonna sack him if they're gonna sack him, maybe he's gonna say, you know what, I'm leaving. But if it's gonna be sacked, Rugby Australia went completely wrong. Not only last 6 months, but last 4 years, starting from Rennie and then leaving Rennie out of the World Cup, which is totally unfair in my opinion, because he was doing such a good job. Even I know the results weren't there, but the fighting spirit was there. The players, he was growing. Wise Mantle as attacking coach. There was a lot of good stuff coming. But if they're gonna sack him, I don't know what they're gonna do. They're already speaking about getting some new rugby league star. Come on, they have to figure it out. The rugby union first, not
Sure.
getting 3 new money on Clearly, or I don't know, Adokar or somebody else. Come on.
Absolutely, yeah. Andy, look, I'm conscious about time. So was there anything you sort of wanted from me and Ottavio from an Italian perspective? Anything that you sort of think that you might be wanting to use at all?
Yeah, just be good to know from the inside knowledge that you guys have got. Like, how do you think they will have taken that on Friday night? Like, how do you think within the camp they can try and bounce back from such a difficult defeat?
That's a good question. The what we've spoken so much about is such a young side. There is so much quality, there's so much enthusiasm, there's so much energy. It's hard to see that they won't have all taken that pretty hard. I think. I mean, I think we're hopefully gonna be speaking to Tomaso and Seb Negri later this week, so we'll sort of get the inside line a little bit more then. But I'm hoping that it would just be it's also hard to not see how that won't act as a huge learning experience for so many of them. I mean, these are boys that have will maybe never come up against something like that ever again in their careers. So for young men, all quality players and individuals, I struggle to see how it won't be a massive learning curve, and I'm hoping that as emotional people, as Italians as we are, that's our thing. I think that we'll see a reaction on Friday. I'm not going to say we're going to win. I'm not even going to say, because I got slated for saying that I even thought we had a chance against New Zealand. So I'm not even going to say that, but I think we'll definitely see a reaction, and I think it will just be a massive learning curve.
I did see Squidge saying on Twitter, before Ireland beat New Zealand, I think 3 games before that, they lost to them 60-0. So, like, it does show how quickly things can turn around, you know? That would have been a hugely embarrassing moment for Ireland, and it still changed pretty quickly. So, yeah.
Man, think about South Africa 2018 lost against us in Florence, and then the years after they win the World Cup. So, yeah, it's crazy. It's going to be a really so many emotions in that game. It's going to be last game for Kieran Crowley as a coach of the team. That is going to be huge. We're going to play without Fischetti. Another big, huge blow for us. It's the first game with Tommy Allen that already broke the records of points with the national team that Dominguez has. So we have all little stories. They want to make a big memory for the group. The group seems really solid, and as Marcello said, we have to learn in every moment of this World Cup, because Varney, when he was with us, was speaking about how he used to send message to Aaron Smith to learn how to be the best, and then now finally play against him in the World Cup stage. So a lot of emotions. Against France is different because we play France every year. Some of our players play there. They know how to win in France. Speaking about Garbisi, they know how to be strong players. Pagelot know really well all the Toulousain there. So I'm not gonna say that there are huge chance, like 40% chance we're gonna win, but yes, we're gonna fight, and they want to forget that 96 points on our shoulder. And the best thing is to fight for the last 80 minutes for the team, for Italy, for Kieran Crowley, for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Andy, I'd just quite like to ask you the sort of players that you've been impressed by massively by Italy. Maybe not on Friday, but before that potentially, and sort of this year in particular, who sort of stood out for you?
Oh, I mean, always Garbisi, right? I think everyone's going to say that. I love watching him play. It's not just that he's got a lot of skill and he's clearly a very good player. It's like his attitude. Like, you can tell he wants to lead. You can tell he kind of wants to be a talisman. Like, he's more than happy to take all of that onto his own shoulders for the team. I can't remember who they were playing. He was playing for Montpellier in the European Cup, and I think they got a man sent off. I think it might have been Exeter away, and they almost won the game playing the whole. Yeah, and they almost won the game playing the whole second half with 14 men.
Yep.
And he was ridiculous. He was just marshalling everyone, screaming at everyone the whole time, making great decisions for the most part, kicking his goals, like just one of those kind of all-action sort of talisman style players. And the fact that he can play multiple positions, I think, yeah, they're like, what's not to love about that guy as a player? But there's a few, like Negri. The way Negri can just melt people is amazing. Like, I think everybody enjoys watching that. Capuzzo, obviously. What was the name of the? Oh, sorry,
what about Zuliani, the guy with usually came from the bench, the guy that usually is the king of the breakdown for us, always juggling the ball. He's the one with the white helmet usually coming in.
Okay, yeah.
That is somebody in Italy. We saw him like one of the best. Some Italian fans want him to play 7 instead of Lamaro, because they see a lot of juggling. A lot of Benetton fans too wants that, because they saw him being like a machine. Actually,
yeah. Actually,
it's been called the Kraken.
The Kraken.
Yeah, they call it the Kraken. Just release the Kraken, because that is the way of
release the Kraken.
I went to Rome for Ireland and Italy this year, and I can't remember which Canone, the number 8,
Lorenzo.
Lorenzo
was
yeah,
just
22.
phenomenal. Like seeing him live, he was
Yeah.
amazing. Like he was so physical, and I've seen him have up and down games since. But yeah, based on his performance that day, that guy is a serious player. Love
Yeah,
watching him.
I think he's been our best player this tournament.
Yeah, really good. It was really good what he did. He scored 22 years old. That's the big thing about him. It, like Giuliani too is this 22, 21 years old. So we have those young guns that they need to play these games, maybe fail sometimes, like we saw last game playing against Savea. But hey, the future can be worst, but looks pretty bright. With at least the players are there, the performance looks good. Then the team has to evolve, but good players are there. Not so many, but good.
Can we squeeze in as well? Because I saw, as always, that there's that knee-jerk reaction after a game like that, and there are people talking about moving South Africa into the Six Nations and kicking Italy out.
No, Georgia.
Or Georgia, right? Well, I'm all for expanding it as long as nobody gets kicked out. But the idea that because of one bad match, that the team should get hoofed, and people talking about there being no improvement. Like, is it just that people don't watch Italy, really? Do you think that's it?
It is. It's people that look at results, maybe watch the highlights of a game. Look, I think when it comes to Six Nations time, I think unless it's your country playing Italy, I think a lot of people just don't watch the game when it's Italy playing that other side. So English fans will watch England play Italy, but they won't watch the rest of the teams play Italy, or that'll be the one game that they'll all go to the pub instead of watching. You know what I mean? I just think we're still at that stage where we're still seen by a lot of people as the whipping boys. So I think that's just the case, and then I think if you're not seeing sort of the progressions that, in particular, sort of Benetton are making, and Zebra as well. We've talked a lot about them as a podcast, and a lot of young players and a lot of those sort of Italian under-20 players. A lot of them sort of coming through this season, particularly. So
yeah, who did they beat at the 20s?
We won against South Africa.
Yeah,
South Africa, huge. Yes. In Parle.
First time. Yeah.
First time.
So yeah, there's plenty of positive things. People are just a little bit ignorant still towards Italian rugby, and that's fine. Results will change that, and that's what we have to strive for. So when a negative result comes along, everyone's quick to latch onto it, and that's just how it is, and that's how it's been for a long time, and we're painfully used to that. I'm afraid we're painfully used to that.
Yeah, I have to
but
say,
yeah,
the fact that you guys can keep the optimism up is amazing, because I know it
Forza Italia, as ever, always.
Sempre, cazzo.
Anyway, Andy, we've just ticked over half an hour, so I think that's a good place for us to stop. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and maybe, hopefully, we'll speak to you again soon. But fingers crossed for Ireland that they get the job done this weekend, and hopefully we see you lot in the quarters. Ottavio, thanks as ever, my man, for joining.
Thank you, guys.
We go again on Friday evening. We go again on Friday. Grazie mille. We go again. But
hopefully I'll be back on soon.
Fingers crossed. Yes, thank you everyone for listening. Grazie mille. Ciao.
Cheers.